What if you could go shopping for fish food and be confident that in just a few minutes you bought the best possible food for your fish? Well, all it takes is a little bit of time and a simple way to understand the product label that I'm going to go through with you right now. And it starts with peanut butter. Peanut butter.
Product ingredients are listed on the label in descending order according to their weight. So the ingredients that are listed first are the ones that the manufacturers use the most of. I like to think of it as the first ingredients listed are the major ingredients and the last listed ingredients are the minor ingredients, and that usually includes the vitamins and the minerals. So in the case of our peanut butter here, the first ingredient is peanuts, followed by the vegetable oil, then we've got salt, and we've got sugar.
Well, you wouldn't want it the other way around, would you? But what about the fish food?
Interpreting the fish food labels is exactly the same process, but first there's a couple of things that you should know.
So don't get bedazzled by the fancy packaging and the colourful labelling. Once you follow these steps, you'll never read the front of the package ever again.
Really?
Really.
What else?
Well, we need to understand a little bit about some of the ingredients.
Adam, I've got the fish food that you wanted.
But that doesn't look like fish food. Exactly. Fish food manufacturers, they're trying to make the best possible food for our fish. But being consumers, we want that fish food to be as cheap as possible. And that drives the manufacturer to use cheaper sources of protein, like soybean meal, and cheaper sources of energy, such as carbohydrates in rice, wheat, and corn, and even potato. But back to the fish food. But time for a little disclaimer. Actually, there was a few there we couldn't even bring ourselves to buy. All of the good ones. Why do I get stuck with all the bad ones?
When you're reading the fish food labels, have a look at the first 4 ingredients listed and just check that they make sense to you as a fish keeper.
Righto. So we've got fish meal in the form of sardines, herring, anchovies, mackerel and tuna. We've got Antarctic krill, poultry meal, and fish and crustacean oil. Well, that one makes sense. I don't know about the poultry meal, but okay, so we've got fish meal, flake corn, rice bran, and wheat flour. All right, so fish meal, tick, but corn, wheat, rice, no. So we've got algae, and that's the form of chlorella seaweed, ulva seaweed, red seaweed, kelp, spirulina, and wakame seaweed. There's a lot of seaweeds in this one. We've got whole Antarctic krill, giant squid, and whole wheat flour. This one's obviously one for the vegetarians. I've got a couple of doozies now. Well, we couldn't even bring ourselves to buy these ones, could we? Wheat starch, corn flour, feeding oatmeal, and dried fish protein digest. And this one's fish meal, dried yeast, shrimp meal, and ground brown rice. Well, at least it starts with fish meal. Yeah, I know, but yeast and brown rice? Okay, so fish meal, wheat flour, wheat germ meal, and dried yeast. Well, it's no wonder we didn't buy that one. I don't think our wrasses would like yeast and wheat germ.
So why do companies make their fish food out of this sort of ingredients? Well, it comes down to nutrition on a budget. So the soybean meal and the wheat germ meal, well, that's a source of cheap protein. And the corn and the wheat, well, that's that carbohydrate I was talking about. That's the energy, the caloric value. But the one big problem is fish actually get their energy from consuming protein and fats, not from carbohydrates. So a lot of that carbohydrates, which is the bulk amount of what's in a lot of commercial fish foods, gets consumed and then excreted or pooed out, and that becomes waste and potentially fouling of our aquarium water.
What about this one? What about that one? Got fish meal, wheat flour, soybean meal, and krill meal. So the fish meal and the krill meal, yep. Well, that makes sense. But the soybean meal, well, that's that cheap protein. And the wheat flour, that's the carbohydrate.
So what should we actually look for when we're reading the fish food label?
Ideally, we want the first 3 or 4 ingredients on the label to be of seafood, animal, or algae origin. So it's probably a little bit unrealistic to think that we'll find a fish food that doesn't contain any soybean meals, wheat flours, or grain type meals or flours. We are budget conscious aquarists after all. Yeah, but make sure those ingredients occur way down the list and that the first 3 or 4 ingredients make sense to you as a fish keeper. And click right now down here and we'll tell you which 2 fish foods are the only ones that we buy. Right now.